All right, Khalil.
Yeah.
Everyone's looking
How do you
at you.
follow that, Khalil? Come on, man.
You know, being new here, you know, I see that I lived in a lot of different regions and places in the country. And so coming here, trying to really access, I had a good friend of mine who I met. First thing he told me, he said, just to remind you that Nashville is white people's Atlanta. And, and I was like, you know what?
So
okay,
good.
I'm
It's so
starting,
good.
I'm
That is
starting
so
to
true.
see that actually be true. And well, like one thing there's important to remember, I think with every city, there's a large international community here.
Right.
That's
yeah.
one thing I've had the pleasure of doing is going out and meeting people from so many different communities. I think it's the largest Kurdish community outside of Kurdistan who lives here in Nashville,
Really?
Tennessee.
It's true, that's
You know? And people tend to forget about that because you don't go down Nolensville Pike. You're not told to go there. You're told to come here to the West End. You're told to go to Broadway and maybe Germantown. But recognizing the history and you know, coming here, I didn't want to make it my job to say Nashville this is what I think you need to do. I just got here. There's no way I have the right to. I need to learn. So I decided to set out and learn. I went down to Fort Negley as they were kind of excavating and they found the original Bass Street community, which is kind of like one of the first emancipated communities in the country, I can imagine, because Nashville was one of the first cities to fall in the Civil War. Well, in doing some research about that, I found talking to Betsy Phillips, who writes for The Scene, she was telling me about in the 60s when the civil rights movement were doing their training. They secretly trained here. John Lewis, Dr. King, they trained here in secret. At the same time, members of the Ku Klux Klan were training in secret to use dynamite and to blow up churches. That's all happening at the same time. You don't hear that about Nashville. Nashvillians don't know it. Tennesseans don't know it, and Americans don't know it. The pivotal impact that things that have occurred here in this city, how they have transferred over to American history in the course of where we're at. And in looking at it as an outsider, I'm like, oh, Nashville, like you said, is looking to be highbrow. We're not like Shreveport. We're not like Birmingham. In many ways, they don't want to even be like Atlanta. So Nashville had the narrative, we desegregated, but we desegregated the correct way.
The nice way.
The
Yeah, there
nice
were. I mean,
way.
there were articles that were like comparing. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No.
Nashville to Birmingham. They've got their bombs. Like, yo,
Yeah.
they were bombing people
Yeah.
in Nashville.
Alexander
Like
Luby's house.
100%.
Yeah.
Like a whole school got bombed because they were that adamant about letting black kids go to school with white kids. We got all these private schools here because they ain't want black kids going to school with white kids. Like all that stuff happened here, just like everywhere else. And so to the point of like doing this PR work, this massive campaign to present Nashville as this thing. Like, this is like pre the rise of the country music industry. Like, Nashville sound is taking off. They have already concocted this idea of what Nashville is in terms of respectability, in terms of keeping black people in their place, and this idea that we are going to go about desegregation in a way that everybody's happy. Nobody's going to say the hard things. We won't let this thing be printed in the media. Yeah.
There's so much more to explore, and we want you to join us on The Good Road.
For more in-depth content, meet us on the internet at thegoodroad.tv.
Hear more great stories, connect to organizations, and make sure you download our podcast, Philanthropology.
There does seem to be hope in the future of us coming together in unity and love. Are you guys sensing that, or am I just being too positive?
One thing I would say to it real quick about, where we are like right now. I started collecting screenshots of all of the announcements about boards, publishers, advancements, and everything like that within country music, to just visually show that. Now I haven't done that completely yet, because honestly it just keeps coming, but it was to your point, going like, well, here are the people who are making the money and then making the decisions about the money. I think we're at a really interesting crossroads in what Nashville wants to be, right? So there was, and again, I take as much blame as anyone in when we were discussing the whole idea of the It City thing. It was to say more than just country or whatever. It was just, probably too simplistic of a message. And that did result in a lot of creative people moving here. And we've been very fortunate, even in the last several years, such incredible people that now call Nashville home as artists. Brittany Howard, or Yola bought a house during the pandemic. Mitski moved here. Like, these incredible, diverse, and amazing people chose this city. But at the same time, in the last 2 years, some of the most vile, folks on the most extremist sides not only came here, but started investing money here. So why is that welcoming to them? And where have we gone from like It City to that city?
Yeah.
And is that where we're headed? Is that where we're going to go? Look at the names on the things downtown, where the money goes. And to your point, it always is about the money. So where does this money go, and where does it want to go in this next little bit? Because we chose to kind of push one direction here, and are we going this other way?
You got a lot of folks from California, Southern California, and all these other quote-unquote what's known as liberal bastions of the country moving here, but you don't see the voting numbers increase. You see how people vote. If it's the It City, are people coming here because they actually care about Nashville, or are they coming here for the opportunity that Nashville represents and provides? I lived in Los Angeles for a very long time, and the old saying was, even the cab driver has either a screenplay or a demo in their trunk. Well, out here, they might have a demo in their trunk or a startup idea. And if the place is going to prosper and grow, people ask me all the time, you just got here, what do you think Nashville's going to be in 10 years? I think it's going to be entirely different than what we even recognize today. It is in the middle part of the ending of whatever transition. I could be totally off base with that, but that's just how I'm feeling with so many folks from different parts of the country coming here with whatever their dreams, aspirations, and hopes are. That's fine. But how invested are you going to be into the community that you live in? And are folks going to be able to afford to live here? This is looking like LA, San Francisco, Bay Area, New York prices just to live. So the idea of coming out here with your guitar, working at a bar, paying enough for a studio bedroom, I think that's kind of gone,
There's so much more to explore, and we want you to join us on The Good Road.
For more in-depth content, meet us on the internet at thegoodroad.tv.
Hear more great stories, connect to organizations, and make sure you download our podcast, Philanthropology. And Nashville is interesting because it is one of those cities that has a net inflow of people every day. I mean, it's a huge number that you have.
Massive.
And now all of a sudden, the role that you guys have to curate what's going on in the city now is a larger and larger audience. I mean, Nashville's grown a ton. But I will tell you that I don't think people read very many articles more than once or listen to a radio thing. They'll listen to a song a million times, you know? And so music it is that kind of force. And you guys have this kind of interesting, you know, responsibility to highlight or not highlight. Julie, you guys do that a lot. So what is the role of music in understanding a place or aspirationally shooting for something? Let's talk a little bit,
representing of
because it's
people.
the music city and there's music that happens and it's not just country, it's a lot of music. But what is music?
There are now greater numbers of artists who are Black Nashville natives who are simultaneously making and releasing music and operating in a very self-sufficient way because they do not have access to industry resources in most cases. There are, I mean, we can point to, you know, a few examples of people who have made their own inroads because they're making their own way, but it was not a path that was laid out for them. But this is a point where you can very easily, if you want to hear it, if you want to find it, there are, you know, a number of different formidable voices that are emerging right now as artists and songwriters, singers, rappers, producers in hip hop and R&B that have lived their entire lives here in the shadow of the industry and in the city, and who, you know, I mean, some came up in North Nashville or out east or whatever, and they understand, they have, you know, a sense of historical lineage and importance. So I have heard a lot of songwriting that talks about the lived experience. I mean, I'm talking about young artists. I'm talking about, you know, I mean, I talk to them all the time. I'm talking about people who are college age and through their 20s into their early 30s and who give us a picture of their experience. You know, I've felt it and, you know, and followed what's happening on an individual level and then also collectively, because that's what it takes. It takes so much ingenuity and so much drive and so much persistence, and it takes people, you know, sort of coming together in collectives and figuring it out. And there is no one model, there's no one path, but that is something that is in our presence. The city has not, it's not that there haven't been artists here coming up, you know, generations back. They have not been heard broadly or covered seriously. And then there's just something about the collective effort and energy of a lot of people striving at the same time to get somewhere, and where they're, you know, I mean, they're working to be heard as individuals, doing with their own vantage points, doing their own thing, their own sound, their own identity, but alongside each other and you know, collaborating. And
so much of, like, you know, what I love about rap, hip hop, and things like that is it's very much it's a what's going on in my neighborhood, this town, or whatever. So much of country music is dirt roads and whatever. I've been in Nashville for a while. I haven't seen that many dirt roads.
you haven't seen many dirt roads?
I'm missing it. But
I think what Julie is saying, they excite me, these artists that she's talking about. This is what excites me, because to Khalil's point about people coming in and getting engaged, do people know what to get engaged about, right? Like, he's talking about the stories that even Nashvillians don't know. There are some Nashvillians who know these stories, right? So to get people that are going to share these things, I think will help increase the engagement. We have people that come in that don't know any better and that move into East Nashville and are like, I love black people. And I'm like, but do you though? Because do you know where you live? And do you know the history of even this community right here? And so having these voices that can come in and shine a light on that, because, I mean, to be honest, we are not anywhere new yet. And I say this about country music, but it applies to Nashville on the whole. Like, what we're seeing right now is not new. Like, you can spend like 2 hours in newspaper archives and seeing that we've had these kind of moments bubble up where there are a group of people who have been, you know, consistently pushed to the margins, who are like, I don't want to be here anymore, and we are fighting for our proper place in this society, in the city. This has happened over and over and over again. People coming here, of course, people have always come here. We have all these colleges. I can't stress enough the importance of having multiple HBCUs here. You know, with Fisk, that was at one point, that was the highbrow black community, and then you've got TSU that is kind of middle brow, and you've got American Baptist that is like somewhere, you know, beneath that. Like, there have always been these groups of people that have come in, that have made Nashville their home, that have seen the issues in the city and have thought to shine a light on it. It's just, will the larger community now deem it important enough to say, okay, yes, we want to get behind this and do something about it?
So I want to go back to it's all about the money.
It's always about the money.
It is
Sorry.
It is.
Amen. Hallelujah.
But an attorney friend of ours who represents the Monacan Nation told me one time, he's like, stuff's not going to get done unless you have some influence in government. And one of the saddest moments when we were interviewing Lorenzo Washington, I said, do black people have a voice in government in Nashville? And he kind of, you know, bowed his head and he says, no, we don't have a voice.
Yeah.
There's so much more to explore, and we want you to join us on The Good Road.
For more in-depth content, meet us on the internet at thegoodroad.tv.
Hear more great stories, connect to organizations, and make sure you download our podcast, Philanthropology.
I mean, government does, you know, that's where legislation gets made. That's where the rules governing the money happen.
But the rub is, Nashville, when I came out here, I was told Nashville is this blueberry in a bowl of salsa.
I haven't heard it said that way. That's cute. That's cute.
It was
Gross.
Clashes a little bit. I was like,
I wouldn't eat that at all. But, you know, so Nashville, Davidson County decides to pass something that would be of benefit to everybody, particularly an economic measure. Well, the state can simply usurp it and then create a law that prevents them from even treading down that path.
Right.
There's this power that the state has over Nashville, I would guess, say Knoxville and maybe Memphis as well, from preventing them from doing anything. So some people already enter into it with a defeatist attitude, from what I've learned from the conversations I've had thus far. I asked people, do you think that Nashville could ever have a black mayor? And it's been weird based, you know, Sunday afternoon calculations in my head. 85% are no.
Yeah.
There's a few people who think, and you know, I'm like, well, who? And they can't think of one. they're thinking, okay, it would have to be a really, really dynamic candidate to come in and to win the mayorship of Nashville.
And I think, yeah, that's just what I was thinking about. People, generally speaking, you're talking about people moving here from Southern California and thinking, well, it's a progressive city. It's also the seat of the state government where we have a Republican supermajority. They don't even need Democrats to show up to have a quorum. The Republicans can show up and pass laws without a Democrat even being there. And, you know, they do create laws that just sort of directly oppose decisions Nashville and Shelby County, Memphis have made about things like community oversight boards. And all of a sudden they're meddling in city government. And you know, even though we think of ourselves as a progressive city, generally speaking, you're right. There haven't been black voices in city government. We had our first woman mayor 6 years ago. She was elected, and it's just been, you know, and sure, they're Democrats and they're white men, but there really isn't a seat at the table in Nashville. And then if you look at, you know, we're in the South. We're in a state that passes some of the most conservative, would be putting it conservatively, some of the most retrograde legislation in the country. We're at the forefront of it constantly. So I think people move here and they think, well, I'm kind of moving to the LA of the South or something, and then they sort of recognize pretty quickly that there are anti-mass demonstrations in downtown Nashville at the Capitol. There are people coming after the rights of transgender youths in the state, the rights of women. So yeah, there's definitely been the push and pull between the conservative state and the somewhat progressive city.
This is again where I come in with the historical, and I'm like, there's always been a Democrat mayor here. Always, always, always. If you think about the ugliest periods in the city's history, there was a Democrat in the mayor's office deciding how, okay, it's time to desegregate schools. Okay, well, hold on.
Not so fast.
How about one grade at a time?
Yeah.
Will be done by 1968. Like these are blue people, right? This is the blueberry and the salsa. So this is again part of that branding where we get to say Nashville is progressive compared to what? Compared to what?
Compared to the rest of the state.
Yeah, I mean this is what we see is how it has always been here, and to the point about black people being disconnected from the process. You get a couple generations into this thing, and your mama know better and your grandmama know better. Why are we showing up? Because even in blue people that talk all that stuff during the campaign ain't really checking for us. We already know that.
There's so much more to explore, and we want you to join us on The Good Road.
For more in-depth content, meet us on the internet at thegoodroad.tv.
Hear more great stories, connect to organizations, and make sure you download our podcast, Philanthropology.
You guys have an interesting perspective because you have both the historical context and your responsibility is to know what's going on and report on it, and, really understand what's going on right now. But what's Nashville? I mean, what is your hopes for Nashville?
I think we are where we could expect to be, given that everything is cyclical. So I'm neither pessimistic nor optimistic. I can go back again and see that we've had these moments before. So then I can also forecast out and say, okay, we're probably going to be here, which means that not a lot will change, and we will have another moment like this again in another 10, 15, 20 years. Again, if I zoom in on country music, what we see right now that everybody is so excited about, like, we have had this very thing, like this group of black people, like, it is chilling to read the articles that say, don't be surprised that Ruby Falls is a black woman. Black women do country music too. Same articles. If we swap out Ruby Falls and drop in Brittany Spencer or Mickey Guyton, these articles are being written today. So I'm not optimistic, because I know that, to Jason's point, we are not changing the people in power that make the decisions. We are not giving, to Julie's point, the people that can really drive this thing on the ground. We're not giving them any resources. How are they gonna do it? They're gonna get tired eventually. I can speak from personal experience and say, yo, this junk is tiring. Like, I'd be exhausted. Like, Julie's calling me. I'm like, nah, because, like, I got to take a step back and go talk about the racism in baseball for a minute because I'm exhausted over here.
Do something else, yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, we have seen this all before. I think it's going to take something drastic. I think it's going to take something radical. And, if you know anything about Nashville doesn't like radical. I ain't feeling good about it. I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah. Well, maybe the better question is, do y'all love Nashville?
I love Nashville. I've been here 12 years.
Because that's the thing. Because we always have this thing between Richmond and Charleston. I love Charleston. Charleston is nuanced and horrible and great. Feels like Nashville.
We love it. That's why we care.
Yes.
But it doesn't feel like y'all don't hate.
No. Let me say real quick. Khalil's been here for 6 months, so he was saying like he doesn't
You sticking around?
Oh yeah.
he doesn't feel like he has a right to say things. I've been here 12 years. I'm gonna say all the things like I would to my brother or sister or father, mother. Like, I'm family now. Like, I'm about to call you on all this stuff because I know what you're capable of. I know your potential. I'm trying to help you get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I'm actual true lifelong Nashvillians might debate this because I'm technically from Sumner County, but I have lived in Middle Tennessee my whole life, and I've seen a lot of changes in Nashville, and a lot of people sort of bemoan. Obviously, there's obvious things that are happening. Rents being driven up, people are being pushed out. Affordable housing is a huge, huge crisis in the city. There's all kinds of things that the changes have brought here that really hurt, the most at-risk people in our city, of course. But there's also brilliant people here. I mean, everybody at this table is, incredibly creative, and I think our city is capable of overcoming the growing pains of it, but we just haven't learned to reckon with it yet. And a lot of people who've been here their whole lives are like, oh, new Nashville, and bemoaning it. Well, cities change, cities grow. You have to figure out how to do it responsibly, get people a seat at the table who haven't historically. Andrea's right, these things are cyclical. People were bemoaning growth, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. Yeah. It's just sort of ramped up a lot in the past decade.
There's so much more to explore, and we want you to join us on The Good Road.
For more in-depth content, meet us on the internet at thegoodroad.tv.
Hear more great stories, connect to organizations, and make sure you download our podcast, Philanthropology.
And Julie, you've been here decades. You got stuff to write about.
Don't age her like that. I felt some kind of way as soon as you said it.
Cut, reset. Julie, you've been here for more than 2 or 3 years.
That is true, and I agree with what you were saying about it would be naive to say we're just to speak in terms purely of optimism or pessimism and predict some drastic change. But I mean, one change that I really feel in a tangible way is that there is a little bit of broadening of the discourse. Even that we have the show that Khalil is hosting, that Andrea, that you waded into the discourse and started writing pieces, 2 or 3 years ago, and that, the kind of things I'm talking about on an artist level, which are also happening. I mean, I was talking about R&B and hip hop, but I also have observed very closely this coalition building on a grassroots level that borrows from, strategies of the music industry and also borrows from strategies of political organizing that's happening in spaces that are focused on everything from the most mainstream of country pop to all the, every different offshoot of or less commercial, approach to music making in, folk and roots and Americana directions of people of color and queer folks, who have made their own decisions about what they're willing to put up with or what is worth it to them to work for. I mean, there are more voices that are registering in more ways right now. People can still choose to ignore that and proceed as though it's business as usual if they want to, but that is a thing that I feel more present in this town. And I think back to historical context, when it comes to talking about and covering music in Nashville, I mean, something that I sort of learned the history of and can still feel the residue of it with us even now is that the beginning of covering music in Nashville was sort of trade publications that were just a mouthpiece for for the music industry. It was just different kind of trade publications that were taking the official narratives. I mean, it was just kind of an extension of PR campaigns. And so there were generations and decades of that sort of unfolding and that being the expectation. And that means, when that's what you've got like an uncritical just amplifying of the story of success and, ambition and crossover and that kind of thing that the industry wants to tell about itself. And so, so we're not there anymore. I still very much feel, that is still an expectation that exists if you're operating too closely to the industry where the money is, I mean, and that's still, you can look around and see like a lot of corporately sponsored platforms and outlets. And it might feel like you're seeing the same story replicated over and over again. There's a reason for that, you know.
Yeah.
But there is a significant broadening of the conversation that should not be discounted because it matters.
There's so much more to explore, and we want you to join us on The Good Road.
For more in-depth content, meet us on the internet at thegoodroad.tv.
Hear more great stories, connect to organizations, and make sure you download our podcast, Philanthropology.
about like the future of Nashville, I think you gotta see where the country goes. You know?
Yep.
Because there's a lot of, even though Nashville is drawing people here, a lot of the same things that are happening in Nashville are happening in pockets all across the country, outside of the major cities that we tend to pay attention to all the time.
Yep.
And, you know, we're coming out of COVID. And so the show I was doing in Albuquerque that got me on the radar to get me here with you all, we kind of focused on what's life like after the pandemic, because people automatically, the pandemic's over, okay, we're going to move on, go back to normal. The normalcy we knew in 2019 is gone forever. Leave that out of your consciousness. And so we're in a new stage now. Are we in the new normal? No. The cement has just been laid. It is not dried yet. We won't find out what the new normal is for 5 to 10 years. So I think it's a little presumptuous to try to set ourselves there. The effects that it has on each one of us as beings, we're going to see. But I can already see that in the past year and a half, 2 years, a lot of people, as the kids, particularly nowadays in the hip hop community, want to say they're going after the bag. And no matter what you identify as, you're going after the bag. You're getting in the money. Jason alluded to some of the organizations that are here. You know, yes, it's this quote unquote progressive bastion, but Parler, which was a big part of January 6th, moved their headquarters here. There's some big time
Daily Wire.
Some big time right wing mouth boxes who have brought themselves and moved here. The Southern Poverty Law Center just released a report last week that says Tennessee has the most extremist groups out of any of the neighboring states. If you look at the neighboring states, that's quite a statement.
We touch Mississippi, so
That is
Mississippi,
quite
Alabama,
a
it ain't looking good.
to say that it's here in Tennessee. So I'm like, where is our country going? And you will see that, and it's both going to be a ripple effect of Tennessee and also Nashville being affected by that, but also Nashville and Tennessee creating some of that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
because
And-
people are looking at it.
And to that point, that I only had two things. One was going to answer your question about, you know, where we go in the music side, but exactly to your point, Khalil, like the assumption for a long time pre-pandemic had been, oh, well, all these people from these quote blue states, whatever like that are moving here, you know, this is going to change some of the politics here and all the rest of it. But yet, and like you said, this is not a Nashville specific story, but Nashville being the center of a lot of these things. Start talking to all of these people who are coming from California and New York and whatever, and ask them point blank, you know, why they moved here. And the answer is rarely just the job. There are a whole lot of folks fleeing, you know, what are we named, like one of the top 5 freedom cities or states, whatever like that. I mean, it is a mass movement. That new normal is gone, and just because someone's moving here from California doesn't mean they're going to all of a sudden, you know, help us with local government or anything like that, you know, in any sort of balanced way, because that's the whole deal. Regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum, we are completely imbalanced right now, and that's never good. I mean, you know, it's, if you know, going back and recently watching stuff about Lincoln and remembering, you know, with the Dixiecrats and things like that done, super majorities are never good one way or the other. And if that's, you know, if that's where we sustain, I don't think that's where my pessimism comes in about our state.
Also, we don't have a state income tax, people like that.
People do love that. That's usually number one.
Because it's always about the money.
Exactly.
Well, that's why we have so many
Andrea's
great
got
ex-athletes are all come here because of the income tax.
There's so much more to explore, and we want you to join us on The Good Road.
For more in-depth content, meet us on the internet at thegoodroad.tv.
Hear more great stories, connect to organizations, and make sure you download our podcast, Philanthropology.
But on the music side, I will say that my most disappointing thing, and I do hope, look, we're a small organization, and all of us around the table, I know, want to do this and have actively been involved in doing things like this, is that I moved here in 1993, and I came from Louisiana, not exactly known as a progressive place, but I will say it was not nearly as musically segregated as Nashville. You go to show and you see all different kinds of people, and all different kinds of music was made, and then I came here and it was like, it was literally black and white. The musical community wasn't necessarily that way, but the audiences, I mean, you could go your entire life and not see someone else, you know, at these shows. And that was amazing to me, you know, just shocking to me. And so we've done things over the years. Eric Holt, who's a wonderful person and great promoter, like we've done shows where we're like, let's build bridges, but you're fighting against a system that's in place that doesn't necessarily want those bridges built. So, you know, there's the pessimistic part of me, and the hopeful part of me is that, you know, can enough people get on board to create situations where musical desegregation happens?
And will that musical desegregation be authentic? Because I'm
Right.
sure the situation in the story
It ain't
would
a federal
change.
program.
I'm sure the situation in the story would change if the Beyonce of country music suddenly decided to start singing songs, and the industry's like, look, we got our cash cow, here we go.
No.
And they're going to bring that
because
story.
it's always about the money. This is why even a lot of black artists that we're seeing being pushed forward now, like they have white bands. Like the money is going into the same pockets. It is always about the money. You will see some mixing on the side where there is no money. You know, where I mean, and I hate to say it.
No,
like
well,
that.
that's
all
where I've
get
existed
along.
most of my life.
I mean, and I didn't want to say that because I know, like, with love noise and all of that, like that is incredible work. There will, you know, you will see some white kids go see, you know, some R&B, but there's where the money is, where this $10 billion industry is, that
Producers,
really
songwriters.
is the I mean, it sucks up all of the air and space in Nashville. There's no mixing over there. There's no mixing over there. Black musicians don't know when there are even auditions for these bands. I mean, I live in Brentwood. There are musicians out in Williamson County that like all they've ever done is play guitar for a living, and they have like $500,000 houses. Like that is where the money is. Beyond the artist, and they are not giving up that space at all whatsoever. That and that's, you know, not to say anything about anybody that's in these offices, you know, running these companies, making the decisions. To Julie's point, you want to come up as a songwriter, like you're white, you want to do country music, you can get a publishing deal, and you can have a couple years to figure it out and develop and all that, because that's where the money is. You can tap into that bag. If you are not that, you cannot, and so now you're left out here figuring it out, trying to build a community, and maybe there's some give and go there. But yeah, it's always about the money, all of it.
Let me just say too, for Earl and me, we love this city. We've been to this city many, many times, and we love it. As two outsiders, this has been already the most exciting, you know, point of our exploration of a city like Nashville, because we're honored to be with you here at this table. I mean, you all are the future of Nashville.
Yeah, and if you guys love it, we still love it. So I would say to our brand new favorite city, to Nashville, thank you guys for the stuff that you guys. Cheers to everything. Cheers guys. Yeah. Cheers, Khalil.
Nobody clinked with me. Click with me.
I clicked with you.
You did. I'm sorry.
There's so much more to explore, and we want you to join us on The Good Road.
For more in-depth content, meet us on the internet at thegoodroad.tv.
Hear more great stories, connect to organizations, and make sure you download our podcast, Philanthropology.